now it's no longer about just your brand. Your brand has to be backed up with the ability to supplement that with dollars, because that's what we're in. So if you want to be in the big poker game, this is what the ante is.
This is Todd Horn and Glenn Gilbo with Tiger Rag. We're talking about LSU's National Signing Day. Hey, Glenn, it's getting a lot of publicity in the national press right now, and they're kind of slamming LSU for having a bad day. They did take some lumps, but it was a good signing class overall.
Yeah, I think getting Solomon Thomas, the number 2 guard or center in the country, now they rank him as interior offensive lineman, from Jacksonville, Florida, and DJ Pickett from near Tampa, Florida. Now, Pickett was a commitment. Solomon was a flip, but that was a pretty strong way to end the class. Although Solomon's commitment was to Florida State, just 2-10, and when he committed to him, they were on the verge of making the playoffs last year. So good for LSU to scoop in there and take one from a bad team, which has happened to them this year. Going 8-4 instead of where they were expected to go. But yeah, I think they finished strong. They started the day 8th. They finished 6th or 7th. Every one of the ratings websites has them between 6 and 8. So that tells you if they would have kept Bryce Underwood, they'd probably be 5th or 4th or something like that.
So let me play Fraudian here with you. You just said that LSU scooped in on Florida State because they had a bad team this year, and that's happened to LSU at 8-4. Do you think?
Maybe.
Do you think some of the people that they lost, like Bryce Underwood and Cade Phillips, do you think they lost them because they finished 8-4?
Maybe. You never really know. And who knows? Maybe.
Well, what did Kelly say about that?
Well, he didn't say anything about that.
Well, he said why they lose the players they lost.
Well, he didn't say it because of their season. He said, well, the one player he lost to South Carolina, that was a tight end, right?
Yeah.
He said that they needed him more. So that brings the price up.
Right.
That brings the market value up. He's already got players at that position. But what I'm saying is, you never really know why you lose guys. Even if LSU was if they were 11-1 right now or 10-2, they might have lost Underwood. They probably would have.
Well, according to what I heard Kelly say yesterday is Underwood fits right into that market value thing. He wasn't going to pay that much for Bryce Underwood. It sounds to me like that if he would have been willing to pay the $12 million that Michigan offered Bryce Underwood, that Bryce Underwood would have probably come to LSU, but he wasn't willing to pay him that much. And I don't blame him.
Well, I didn't hear him say that. But,
I'm reading between the lines.
Okay, well.
Now, I know with Cade Phillips, that Texas offered him $1 million, and LSU was offering him $800,000.
Right.
And Kelly didn't want to make that move up to get Cade Phillips, even though he may not have. But if he would have offered him $1 million and matched it, he might have gotten him. But again, the value for Cade Phillips was different for LSU because they have DJ Pickett coming in, and there's also some players in the transfer portal that they may be interested in at cornerback.
Yeah.
Cade Phillips wasn't even a cornerback. Cade Phillips was a safety that Corey Raymond wanted to move to cornerback. So there's all kinds of nuances and things that go into this, and I think that's what Kelly was talking about yesterday when he said, we value our roster and the players we want to plug in and recruit or go after in the transfer portal based on what we look at them as. And then, like in your example, South Carolina looked at the tight end differently than Kelly and the LSU staff looked at it.
Right. And even if, regardless of the numbers of players, if they think if one of the schools thinks a player is not that great, they're not going to pay him. what somebody else is paying. That's not the case with Underwood, obviously. But with other players, I think, like, well, wait a second, that guy's not that good. We got somebody better than him already, and we're not paying him as much. So we're not going to pay him. Let him go to the other school. I think that happens sometimes. But, the bottom line is they finished pretty good. They didn't have all the flips that people feared they would have. And one of the feared flips was DJ Pickett. They kept him. So it's a pretty good class. It's like Kelly. Kelly's got a great salary, but he's never had a great season. He's had pretty good seasons, and he's never had a great recruiting class. He's had pretty good recruiting class. So he's continuing on.
But I mean, look, they got 3 5-stars, 17 4-stars, and 3 3-stars in this class. They got the number 1 ranked player in the state of Louisiana in Harlem Berry. They got the number 1 player in Arkansas in Kern. They got the number 1 player in Florida in Pickett, and they got the number 1 player in Indiana in Shanklin, Damian Shanklin.
Yeah, it's a pretty good class. It's a top 10 class. They got half a dozen top 10 or 11 ranked players. They got
5 top 10 or 6 top 10 rated players.
4 top 5 or 4 actually top 2 players. But what sticks out too to me is they also have the number 95 defensive tackle, Deion Battle, the number 65 offensive lineman, Carius Kern, 77 defensive tackle, Zion Williams, 73 wide receiver, Philip Wright, 87 defensive tackle, Walter Mathis. So that's some large fluctuation. They got some 3-stars in there, and to me, that's not a great sign.
Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's listen to Kelly, some excerpts from Kelly yesterday, because I thought it was a very interesting press conference in a number of ways, and I'd like to get your take on that as well.
Hi, I'm Mike Munderland, and we're here to smash the capital city's trash.
Smash My Trash is a revolutionary compactor for large dumpsters, sometimes reducing the volume of waste by up to 70%. This means fewer hauls per month and big savings for your business. Fewer hauls and compacted waste will also result in a positive impact on our community and our environment by taking up less space in our local landfill sites. Schedule your company's free demo today. Call 225-497-0101.
Well, I mean, I think you could make the case that, you just go out through the entire year and you raise money, right? That's one. And look, I'm not trying to be a wise guy, but one side of it could say, hey, let's just go raise money the entire recruiting season and get X, and then the last few weeks, let's just go buy a team of freshmen. Obviously, that's not what we're going to do, right? But what it means is that recruiting no longer is just about recruiting. It's no longer just about relationships. You need a collective, you need the NIL to supplement your recruiting efforts. And that's just the reality of what we live in, because you can't close every one of these just because you've got great relationships and they want to go to LSU. Because I'll give you an example. Where we see Tyler Miller, relative to revenue sharing, another school might see him much higher because they value him 20%, 30%, 40% more because they need him more. And so their number comes in at X. It doesn't mean we devalued him, but we've got 3 other tackles in our program. And so that's where the rub comes, right? That's where this comes of, well, so-and-so's offering us X, and you're only offering us Y. Well, it has nothing to do with your value. It's just the other program doesn't have a tackle, and they desperately need you as their cornerstone, and so they're going to spend more money. So it's not your market value. It's what they need, and that's where this becomes really, really difficult. Anybody that we've lost in the last few days it wasn't because we didn't offer money. It wasn't because we didn't recruit them. It was because the value that was meant to them was exponentially more. It wasn't market value. It was exponentially more because it meant they needed that piece, and they were going to do whatever was necessary to get that piece.
Okay, so everything Kelly just said there makes 1,000%, okay, sense. It's very logical. It makes a lot of sense. I think it accurately represents the situation that LSU and every other major college, hell, every other college in that's competing in football today faces. NIL's now in its third year. Why does Kelly just now come to this realization after? And I'm not trying to be mean to him or mean about it, but it sounds to me like this is just a revelation to him. This has been going on for 3 years, and it was just last transfer season when he was going for the defensive tackles that he says he wasn't going to pay players just to come to LSU.
Yeah, Wilson Alexander and I spoke about that after the press conference, and I asked Kelly that question. I said, I quoted some of the things he said, and I said, this has been going on for 2 years. Are you making these points now? Is what you're saying that it's just gotten more complicated, more advanced, and multiplied? And he said yes. He said, it's much different. Even though the concepts he's talking about have been around for 2 or 3 years, he says it's much different now. Like these the collectives are more advanced. They have more money. They're better at the job. Various schools. LSU's not, and at last, he's trying to catch up. Whereas I think last year at this time, or maybe even last month at this time, he wasn't thinking about the portal like that.
Glenn, do you think that yesterday part of what he was saying was you guys better wake up and put your money where your mouth is if you really want to be competitive and stay competitive, or I'm not going to be able to be taking receipts like I promised?
I think that's what you're saying.
No, I said, do you think that's what he's saying?
No, I think that's what you're saying. I don't think that's really what he was saying. I think maybe that's what he means, but I don't know. As far as what he said, he was saying you got to have a collective. Well, they got a collective. Maybe he was saying that we got to have more money, or maybe he was saying they do have it, because part of what he was saying was Baton Rouge does have billionaires. So it's like he's already in contact with it. I also think what he was saying was, and I wanted to ask you this, when he was talking about how this team needed that player more than we did. Do you think he was talking about Bryce Underwood?
I think
because they got Nussmeier.
I think he was talking about the astronomical value of Bryce Underwood just being astronomical, and that was not something they were going to do. And I think that's smart, because I don't care how good you think a player is right now. He's still a high school senior. And he could be. I think he was probably talking about Cade Phillips more specifically. Okay,
because I was talking to the people after the press conference too, and they agreed that and he actually mentioned 2 players, but he didn't say their name, and we were guessing, and we came up with Bryce Underwood and Cade Phillips. But you see, here's the deal: Michigan doesn't if Michigan didn't get Bryce Underwood, who would their quarterback be? The guy they had this year?
Well, they had a 5 or 4-star signee already committed.
Okay, but they don't have anybody
since left and is now going to Texas A&M.
Okay, well, he left
because Underwood came. Right.
But they don't have anybody as good as Nussmeier, right? Before Underwood.
Is this subjective?
I'm telling you, they don't have anybody as good. I think that's what Les. That's what Kelly was trying to say. They really needed Underwood. Now LSU would have liked to have him, and they really need him in 26. But they don't need him as much now because they got Nussmeier. So maybe that's what he was talking about.
And I think that's a good point. And I also think that a lot of people are not remembering that Colin Hurley, who reclassified and spent a year at LSU this year as a redshirt freshman, is a very highly rated quarterback. And he's in my opinion, the heir apparent, and he's the beneficiary of all this nonsense with Underwood. But I personally believe that Kelly was talking most specifically about Cade Phillips, because Cade Phillips, 50 days ago, committed to LSU, even called off supposedly. This is what you can't trust any of this stuff anymore. Supposedly called off his last visit to Texas, and then called them on Sunday or Monday night and told them that he was, been offered $1 million and, match it. They were like, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. Bryce Underwood is from Detroit, okay, and he ended up at Michigan. Cade Phillips is from Missouri City, Texas. He ended up at Texas. I think you might be seeing that, and I think this might be what that was. Like, here's a guy, he probably really wanted to go to Texas the whole time, Cade Phillips. Here's a guy who probably wanted to go to Michigan the whole time, Bryce Underwood. But they want to bring their price up though, so they commit to another school. That's good marketing from them. And you see, I think in the first year of NIL and the first year of NIL, I don't think the recruits were as business savvy as they are now. Well, and now they got probably better handlers. Everybody's gotten a little better at it.
Well, what's so interesting to me about it, I know you laugh at me and almost act like I'm stupid, but this is not supposed to be pay for play. This was supposed to be you sign with your college that you want to go play football for, that recruits you the best, and then you start NIL discussions. It's completely different. The transfer portal.
It was completely different right off, though.
But what I'm saying is there's absolutely – what is the NCAA? The NCAA is worthless.
Well, that's also not new.
That's clear. So they need to go away.
Well, I mean, then what would you have?
You're going to have the new Big Ten SEC conglomeration.
Oh, so the Big Ten and the SEC are going to govern themselves?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Like the Fox watching the hen house.
You ever heard of the college football playoffs?
The NCAA is really bad, but it's the only thing you got.
I'm not advocating it. I'm saying what's happening.
You just said they ought to go.
No, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, they're still punishing people, but they're just much weaker than they used to be. But I think the NCAA threw up their hands because they lost so many lawsuits, But I know what you're saying. I remember in the first year of NIL, Saban kept saying, well, you're not supposed to pay them until they get here. You can say, this is what you might get when you get here because this is what this guy's getting, but we can't pay you right now. Well, everybody just ignored that rule for 3 years.
And look at the transfer portal. Look at the transfer portal.
Yeah, like
you don't even have to be in the transfer portal, and they're talking to players right now on your roster.
Sure, because the NCAA is weak, and they're not going to do anything. So yeah, all the schools are talking to potential transfers weeks and days before the window opens, which is not till Monday. And the players may be calling them too. So yeah, I mean that's nothing new. That's been going around for years. It's good for LSU that Brian Kelly is finally coming to the realization of these things. And that was one of the first things I noticed yesterday while he was talking. I'm thinking, golly, he's talking about this like NIL just started. And NIL started in 2021.
Well, so as LSU goes into the transfer portal starting on the 9th officially, looking for players, Kelly says they're going to bring in 12. He said that yesterday, around 12. I mean, I guess the number could vacillate a little bit. It could be 13. It could be 11. But 12 seems to be the magic number right now. And I also understand that LSU is paying this roster more than double the amount that they planning to pay than they paid last year.
The whole roster?
The whole roster. So that number looked like $7 million last year. So you're talking about at least 14, 15, maybe as high as 16 or 17 million that will be devoted to this roster. So who do you think? Well, let me ask you this. Let's back up. Who in this freshman class has a chance to play? Well, let's hear what Kelly has to say about that.
Well, I mentioned Karius Kern. I mean, I felt like physically he might be one of the strongest players that I've recruited at the position in a long time. He has that kind of physical characteristics. I would say Zion Williams is big and physical, a guy that you could plug in immediately. Those are big physical guys. I'd say just because of his length, DJ Pickett, and his pedigree is a guy that could come in right away. Again, Bordelon is physically as strong as some of the offensive linemen we have. Those are guys physically that can do it. Now, who are the guys that can make the transition that have the physical tools to do it? Now you're talking about Harlan Berry, right? You're talking about Philip Wright. You're talking about skill guys. Can they make that flip and transition? Because they certainly have the skill to do it. But the big physical guys, I would lean on Kern, Bordelon, Zion Williams. Those are guys that physically are ready.
Okay. Makes sense. Physically, those guys are ready to play. Are they going to be mentally ready? Are they going to be able to adapt to college? Are they going to pick up the schemes? Are they going to be able to transition into players that actually have significant playing time or start? LSU needs some starters, which is why the transfer portal is going to be so important to fill in those gaps. Who there do you see in your mind that could possibly be an immediate starter?
Of the freshman class?
That he talked about, only that he talked about.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some of the guys he talked about are really low ranked, but he thinks they have the size to come in. But I think he's talking about they need defensive linemen to come in there. So I think he's going to maybe play them maybe before they're ready, and he doesn't know if they're ready now. He hasn't seen them practice, so I think he was just talking. I find that hard to believe, especially freshman linemen being ready to play before he's even seen them.
Well, I guarantee you DJ Pickett's going to play.
Okay, well, that's not a lineman.
I didn't say the lineman.
And
you gravitated towards the lineman.
You asked me of the guys he said. He didn't mention Pickett.
He did too.
Oh, he did? Okay, I thought he was just talking about the lineman.
He also mentioned Harlan Berry.
All right, well, to answer your question, the guys I think are going to play right off, I think is going to be DJ Pickett. I think it's going to be Harlan Berry. But he might not start. He's going to have to beat out
Caden
Durham, right? But I mean, other than that, I mean,
I heard
Solomon Thomas might be a guy who could come in and play right away. And it depends who they get in the portal. I mean, if they get some good offensive linemen or defensive linemen in the portal, they're going to play before these guys, most likely. So it's.
So what do you think are the biggest position needs in the portal right now?
The biggest position needs in the portal, I would say, are offensive line, defensive line. That would be it for me.
Well, see, I don't disagree with you as far as the offensive line goes. I think the defensive line, they've got Dominic McKinley coming back, who finished strong this year. They got Jacoby and Guillory coming back. And then they've got depth with the recruits they brought in, plus Ahmad Bro and Gabriel Relaford, who both played well. I think they do need some edge rushers from the transfer portal.
Yeah, they're losing two of those, and maybe they'll get Harold Perkins back.
Yeah, and put him at edge rusher instead of inside linebacker. I also think they need desperate help at safety. I think, everybody talks about Deshaun Spears is going to be good. He didn't, and I'm not saying Deshaun Spears is not going to be good, but I don't think he had the freshman season that he could have had, and I think they need help and depth at safety. I think they need a star, even though they may be playing mostly three linebackers next year. I think they need a top-tier wide receiver, whether Chris Hilton comes back or not, because he's so injury-prone. I think they need a cornerback. I think they need another cornerback, a proven cornerback. But I do think the interior offensive line, they may even need a tight end. Depends on what happens with the tight end situation.
I think also as they go into the portal, and if they're trying to get 12, as he said, I think, go after the positions you need. But if you have a shot at a guy, regardless of position, you know how they say best player available in draft? I say you go after him too. Because, I don't see any spots on the LSU team that have overwhelming strength where you would say, oh, you know what? You're a great player, but we already got a couple of you guys. Is there a position like that that's so great they don't need any help?
I think running back is going to be pretty solid.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably the only one I would say because I like Caden Durham, and I don't think we saw him at 100% the last few games.
Yeah, he's having surgery this offseason.
Yeah. Plus they got the number one running back in the country from St. Martin's and Metairie, Harlan Berry is coming in, as we said. JT Lindsay is number 8. Plus, you had a good signee just a couple of years ago in Caden. Is it Caleb Jackson? Who has not played a lot this past season. So you're right. If there's one position where they probably look sound, it's running back, and then they look sound for quarterback for this season. But he needs a backup. Hurley's probably the backup, but you're probably not going to get a quarterback in the portal. So I would say every position but quarterback and running back in the portal.
Well, Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma is available now. He entered the portal yesterday. You know who else is in the portal? Miller Moss from USC.
Interesting.
I think they need a center. We talked about offensive line. Borderline, the signee, Borderline, not the older brother, but
Brett
Bordelon, it could be a center. They could also put, from what I understand, Thomas could be a center. So I would say maybe move. And if Emory Jones comes back, he's moving to guard because the NFL wants him at guard. So they could be, if they could just figure out the center position, I think that's real important.
Well, one thing I think they need to do when they get everybody in from the portal window, they get everybody in from the second signing period in February, and then that second portal window, is that after spring practice? That's after spring practice. Okay, well, in spring practice, they need to look at the first portal window and their 2 signing classes, and they need to figure out then, or have a pretty good idea of who can play, instead of trying to figure that out in freaking September.
4 games into the season.
Yeah. Now, there's some of that because you get new guys coming in August sometimes, and then you might have some new portal guys kind of in the B portal, if you will, which is the second portal. But they gotta start figuring out who can play, and then they gotta start figuring out well, we need this guy to play. We need to get him better. Like Sean Foster. You need to get ready. It's like they're not making those hard decisions and figuring out who they got quick enough. That's what they need to do.
A lot of Kelly's excuse or reason for that this year was he had new coaches. Blake Baker and all the new defensive coaches. But that won't be an excuse next year.
No, it won't. And as we said earlier, I think it's a pretty good class, and Kelly has been pretty good overall at LSU, but he needs a great portal class. He needs to have one of the highest ranked portal classes for him to make the jump from very good coach to great coach and answer his salary and finally get back into the playoffs.
Taking receipts.
That's right. I'm taking receipts too, pal.
All right, pal.
Trains are everywhere. You should always expect one, even on private property. Only cross tracks at designated crossings that fit your equipment. If you don't fit, don't commit. Look, listen, live.
It's time to start betting on yourself. Louisiana 988 can help if you're dealing with tough emotions caused by gambling habits. You can share as much or as little as you want, and it's completely confidential. It's free, available 24/7, and most people who reach out report feeling better right in the moment. Call or text 988 anytime.